Welcome, gather round the fireside and listen to a tale of Fionn McCool, Cullen, Deirdre of the Sorrows, Grainne Wail. From giants right down to fairies, of both the drooping and solitary, and those who are sometimes scary. Anything goes by the fireside. Yeah. Fireside, the Puka Fireside, the Marrow Fireside. Kings and queens fighting heroes, don't you run from the fun, there's no need to hide. Sit by the fireside. Fireside. Hello and welcome to Fireside, the Irish storytelling podcast. Every episode of Fireside we take a story from folklore and mythology, we retell the tale and have a chat about the craft, culture and history of storytelling. My name is Kevin C. Olahan and I am your host and your Fireside Bard. It is episode number 14 of Fireside and we are dealing with the landing of the Gael. This is the last story of the mythological cycle, the earliest cycle of Irish myth. So if this is your first time listening to the podcast, you're very welcome along, but why don't you head back to episode 2 to hear the story of the landing of the Tuatha Dé Danann, to hear what we've been building up to this in our look at Irish mythology. And if you are a returning listener, welcome back. Thank you so much for your continued support of this podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Thank you for those who have subscribed, who have left ratings, comments. Please continue to do so. As I say, it does every comment and every rating does make a difference in building this podcast into what I know it can become and is becoming. I am talking to you now. I'm recording this from Galveston Island in Texas. I am still on tour around the United States with Celtic Nights Irish music show, where I'm singing and performing as a music and telling a few stories myself. And yeah, the last time I recorded one of these episodes, I was in LA. And I've been in quite a few places since then. I tried to get a bit ahead of myself because it's hard enough to record. I've great gear to record this on the road, but it can be hard to find the time or even just the space more than anything. Usually when we're in the theaters, like the lads might be sharing a dressing room or we travel around the States by bus. So there's usually no time to do it or space to do it on that either. So you try and steal a moment where you can. And I'm recording this in a basement office in the Galveston Opera House where we're performing the show tonight. It is a beautiful, beautiful city, beautiful island. I've had a bit of a look around. Really, it's very southern and also seems very like New Orleans or something. Like there's a real great vibe around. I can't wait to explore a little bit more later on today and tonight. Amazingly, like a real folklore town. It seems very appropriate to be recording the podcast in this town because there's a witchery. So there's a place with like spell books and books on ruins and loads of different spiritual stones and psychics and tarot cards and all this kind of crack. Incredible shop now. I went in there twice, to be honest, in the one day. Picked myself up a nice little Morrigan necklace, which I love. It was a great find to have, and got a few other bits there as well. But so it felt very appropriate to be recording this podcast in this city on this island. But yeah, since I was in LA, I've been in, where have I been in? I've been in Missouri. We had a few days off in Chicago. Been in Oklahoma City. We were a few spots around Wisconsin. We had 3 shows in Wisconsin. Actually, I have a great story to do with the podcast that happened in Columbus, Ohio, which I will tell you after the story because we want to get down to it as soon as we can. But I'm delighted to finally have the opportunity and the chance to record another one of these podcasts because I love doing these on the road so much. So this story, this is the climax. Well, it's not the climax. This is the finale of the mythological cycle. It's a lovely end to it, actually. I thought it would be quite a winding down, but this is a great tale that I hadn't known at all. And I'm really looking forward to telling it to you now. So I'll get right to it. And we can chat a bit more after the story, because I have plenty to talk about. But this is The Landing of the Gael on Fireside. The landing of the Gael. All reigns must come to an end, even those, it would seem, of the gods. The Tuatha Dé Danann had a long and prosperous rule over Ireland, but their time had come to an end, to make way for the coming of the Milesians, the Gaels, or as they would become known, the mortal Irish people. The last three kings of the Tuatha Dé Danann were Mac Cecht, Mac Green, and Mac Cill, the sons of the plough, the sun, and the hazel. Each individually personified the three things the Tuatha Dé Danann had always held most dear. They were the grandsons of the Dagda. They ruled together, with each brother ruling for a year at a time. Each was also married to a sister queen of Ireland. Mac Quill was married to Banba, Mac Cecht to her sister Fodhla, and finally Mac Green was married to Ériu. One such story of these three high kings is that their father, Kermit, had an affair with a woman named Buach. Buach just so happened to be the wife of Lú Lá, who swiftly murdered Kermit when he found out, as you would. Kermit's three sons swore revenge. They found Lú swimming in a lake and drowned him. They buried him on the hill of Uisneach, the point where the 5 provinces meet. This is, of course, just one story, as many believe that Lú never died, as he constantly returns throughout the remainder of the Irish mythological cycles. But one story that is worth believing is one day a ship was spotted off the north coast of Leinster. On board were 8 sons of Milespania, or Milesus as he's known in Latin. These sons of Milesus would be known as Milesians. They had sailed from Hispania, or the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain. Also on board with the sons of Milesus were their cousins, the 9 sons of Ith. Ith had been brother to Milesus. The first to land on the shore was Amergin, one of the 7 sons of Milespania. He spoke to his kins. "Brothers, cousins, family, we have landed on the island that has been promised to us. Let's march on the hill of Tara, for revenge, for victory." There was a mighty cheer. The Milesians knew that they were marching for the hill of Tara, but the problem was they didn't know where that was. They knew it was inland and obviously that it was a hill, but that's all they had to go on. So they just marched around looking for hills. First they came to the mountain of Slieve Mish, where they encountered a single woman standing alone. They asked her name. "My name is Banba. I am the wife of Mac Quill, the son of the Hazel, king of the Tuatha Dé Danann. You are destined to rule this land, but only if you name it in my honour." Amergin chose not to question Banba, and promised he would, once he had overthrown her husband and her brothers. Then the Milesians came to another mountain, Slieve Evelyn. There they encountered another woman, who introduced herself as Fodhla. "I am wife to Mac Cecht, the son of the plough, king of the Tuatha Dé Danann. You are destined to overthrow my husband and his brothers and rule, but only if you name this new nation after me." Amergin replied, "No problem. Once, as you say, we overthrow the 3 high kings." Another son of Milesus whispered in his brother's ear, "But Amergin, what about the other?" "Shut up," interrupted Amergin. The sons of Milespania and Ith then came to the hill of Uisneach, where the 5 provinces meet, the mythological centre of Ireland, the supposed burial place of Lú. The Milesians thought that this place surely was Tara, but once again all they found was another queen of Ireland. The woman had her cloaked back to the Milesians. "Let me guess," said Ériu, another of the sons of Milesus. "She's going to be another queen, the wife of Mac Green, son of the sun." The Milesians approached, but as the woman turned around, they were all struck dumb. The woman was at once the most beautiful and most frightening of the 3 sisters. She seemed to change from beauty to a sharp-beaked grey and white crow. The Milesians were afraid to look or speak. "I am Ériu," the queen said at last, "Queen of Ireland. wife to Mac Green, and you are the sons of Milispania and Ith. You have come to conquer and settle in this land, and you shall do, but you must name this new land after me." Even though every one of the Milesians knew exactly what Ériu was going to say, none of them dared interrupt her. Amergin swore on the lives of all of his kinsmen he would make it so. The Milesians were, of course, in a dichotomy now. They had sworn to name a country they hadn't even conquered yet to 3 different women, 3 sister queens, the wives of their enemies. This was surely some kind of trick. Or perhaps they could only be successful with the blessings of these 3 queens. So Amergin decided that there was no reason why the country couldn't be named after all 3. From thenceforth, the nation was known as Éire, after Ériu, of whom the Milesians were most afraid. But they also would refer to the land as Fodhla and as Banba. And to this day, poets and scholars will refer to Éire as Fodhla or Banba as well, in the same way that a British person may refer to their land as Albion. But we won't talk anymore about the British now. But first they had to conquer Éire before they could name it. The Milesians finally arrived at Tara and met with Mac Cecht, Mac Quill and Mac Green, the 3 high kings of the Tuatha Dé Danann. When they were brought before them, the Milesians were shocked to discover the 3 men bickering with each other. As it never does, the joint kingship was not working. They would constantly bicker about who was the greatest or the most important. "The hazel is sacred. Without the plough, there is no food. Without the sun, there is no life." The Milesians began to contemplate leaving the 3 kings to destroy themselves and to then return and pick up the pieces. But Amergin was far too noble for that. "We have come for revenge, you cowards. Let us not forget that." Amergin marched towards the 3 kings and announced, "Treacherous kings of the Tuatha Dé Danann, my name is Amergin, son of Milispania of the Iberian Peninsula, and these are my brothers, and these are our cousins, the sons of Ith. Does the name Ith mean anything to you?" "Should it?" said Mac Cecht. "Ith," continued Amergin, "was my uncle. He spotted your nation from atop the tallest tower in Hispania. He sailed to this land where his people were prophesied to live. He came before you 3, and you murdered him in cold blood." The 3 kings were silent. "I don't remember your uncle," said Mac Quill, "but if he came seeking out our throne, what did you expect?" "He didn't seek your throne, just a home for his people," said Ériu, "and you cut him down." "So what is it you seek?" asked Mac Green. "Vengeance for our uncle," said Amergin. "Vacate your throne to us or prepare for war." The High Kings didn't know whether or not to laugh, but from the look on the Milesians' faces, they meant serious business. The Tuatha Dé Danann had not been involved in a war since the fight against the Fomor many years beforehand. Their army was totally unprepared and ill-equipped, but what they did have on their side was magic. Mac Green said to the Milesians, "We do not wish for war, but nor will we give up our throne. We propose a battle of wit and enchantment. We ask you to make another proposal to us." The Milesians thought this over, until at last Amergin said, "We will return to our ships, and we will sail the length of 9 waves away from the shore. If you can successfully keep us from landing, we will leave you to this land. But if we make it to the shore, you must vacate the throne and leave it to us." The 3 kings readily agreed to this proposal, as they were incredibly confident in their powers over the wind and the sea, and all of the sons of the Milispania and Ith retreated to their ships and sailed out past the 9th wave. When they turned their ships to make their offense on the shore, the druids of the Tuatha Dé Danann raised a mighty storm around the entire island of Ireland. The storm tossed and turned the ships and swept many of the Milesians to their death. Only 3 sons survived: Heber, Ériu, and Amergin. They knew this was no natural storm, So Amergin called on the spirits to aid them. We, the sons of Milesius, ask this land to let us in. Let our people live here. Let our own sit on the throne at Tara. May this land that lies in darkness be brought under our rule. We ask this in the name of this land, Ériu. After Amergin spoke these words, the winds and rains finally died down, and the ship of the Milesians was finally able to land. And it was at Inversane, off the coast of Kerry, that they made their landing. Amergin was once again the first to the shore, but this time he made his claim to the land with what has become known as the Song of Amergin. I am the wind on the sea. I am the wave of the sea. I am the bull of 7 battles. I am the eagle on the rock. I am a flash from the sun. I am the most beautiful of plants. I am a strong wild boar. I am a salmon in the water. I am a lake in the plain. I am the word of knowledge. I am the head of the spear in battle. I am the god that puts fire in the head. Who spreads light in the gathering on the hills? Who can tell the ages of the moon? Who can tell the place where the sun rests? The Tuatha Dé Danann could not believe that the Milesians made it to the shore, and Mac Cecht, Mac Cuil, and Mac Green were no strangers to treachery. So they decided they wouldn't honour the agreement between them and the sons of Milesius. So they went to war. Amergin asked for them to meet in Talton in Meath. The Tuatha Dé Danann raised their army, and the Milesians raised their own by sending for more of their own people back home. The forces met in battle at Talton, and the bloodiest war yet seen in Ireland was engaged in. The two sides were well matched, but the Milesians had vengeance on their side. They had the bloodlust, and this tipped the scales in their favour. Eventually Ériu, Fodhla and Banba engaged in the battle. This confused the Milesians, as they thought the 3 queens were playing both sides against the other. But the 3 sisters wiped out many of the Milesians with their enchantments and their skill as warriors. It was only when they met with the 3 brothers, Heber, Eramon and Amergin, that Ériu, Fodhla and Banba finally fell. The Milesians asked to meet the 3 kings in single combat, a brother for a brother, to finally settle the matter. Mac Cuil, Mac Cecht and Mac Green had no choice. They met each of the sons of Milispania in battle, and the last 3 high kings of the Tuatha Dé Danann were slain. The Milesians had won. Their uncle Ith had been avenged. What happened next changed and shaped Ireland forever. An agreement was reached with those who remained of the Tuatha Dé Danann, those who were known as the ever-living ones. Ireland would be divided. The Milesians would take the world above, and the Tuatha Dé Danann would retreat to the world below, or the other world. They would become a new people, the Sidhe, the fairies. As for the Milesians themselves, they divided Ireland further. Amergin had no desire to rule, despite his skills as a leader. So he decided Eramon would rule the northern half of the country, and Heber would rule the southern half. But within 2 years, Eramon had killed both Heber and Amergin, and Ireland was united under one mortal ruler at last. They decided they would no longer call themselves Milesians. The Norsemen would call them Vestmen, Westmen. But they would choose a different name. They traced their ancestry to Gael Glas, who from 72 others crafted their language, a language he called Gaelic. The Milesians were known henceforth as the sons of the Gael, and the Gaelic tradition lay its roots in Ireland, never to leave ever again. The poets of old used to have a saying that any Irish person who was brave or good in battle or could do great things without boasting or asking for a reward, he or she was a son of the Gael, whereas anyone skilled in music, arts or magic was a son or daughter of the Tuatha Dé Danann. To be continued. And she is done. There is the end of our, certainly for the moment, our first look at the mythological cycle of Irish mythology on Fireside. And what an ending, what an important story that kind of ties, as those who listen to this podcast regularly will know, I alternate from week to week where I do folklore or mythology. And they're very different in a lot of ways, in their content, in my approach to them. But of course, they are all connected one way or the other. And this is the moment where they connect. This is the moment that the Tuatha Dé Danann are defeated by the Milesians, and that they make that decision to go underground into the other world. And that is why that fairies are considered so vengeful, so wicked, so evil against humans, as they resent that their country was taken off them by mortals. And that is the reason why it's so dangerous to mix with fairies, is that they are just old pagan gods still put out by being forced underground. Isn't that incredible? And that was just a firmly held belief. And even if it's not true, that's still incredible storytelling. That's so imaginative. That's so vivid. And I love it. And this was when I started reading this story. Of course, the first thing is where this was really hard to research the background of, and I hope I was able to make this story clear. I tried Stephen Fry's books Mythos and Heroes are two of the biggest inspirations on not only this podcast, but just how I read and approach storytelling. Myself along with Neil Gaiman and Phil Pullman. But in Heroes, I think Stephen Fry spoke about how loads of names would be thrown at you when you're listening to a Greek myth. And he says openly in it, don't worry, a lot of names are going to be thrown at you. Just the ones that are important you'll remember. And I tried to clean and condense and try to make it just a few characters in this. And because it's so lovely, any triadic structure in anything, any rule of three in any story, it just makes it seem so fairy tale-y, so folk tale-y. So the meetings of Ériu, Fodhla and Banba, those are, even though this was a story that I hadn't heard before, that part of it is one that nearly every Irish school child learns at one point. You heard about Ériu, Fodhla and Banba, and you heard that's why Ireland is called Éire. But it's that confusing thing of the fact that it's also called Banba and Fodhla in the same way, as I said, that England would be known as Albion. It is it's a poetic term for it. But what a cool way for that to come about. And they're three badass young ones now, I have to say, the three Gaels. And it was great to meet them properly, because in the first episode about the Tuatha Dé Danann, we heard they existed and fine ultimate battles themselves. And the three boys, another rule of three, the Mac-Ceacht, Mac-Green and Mac-Quill, that's the plough, the sun and the hazel. The three just most valuable things. Tuatha Dé Danann obsessed with those. While I think of it, there's one I kind of just need to say straight away, but I do my own versions of these stories. I rewrite them entirely myself and try to add my own or make them my own twist to them. I do it a lot more with the folk tales, as the details is a lot more important in the mythology, and often the storytelling is just so strong itself, whereas you can get good or sometimes not bad but dated versions of a lot of the folk tales. But this is one of the first things I've taken verbatim from the book I found it in, as this is a definitive version, and that is the song of Amergin, the I am the wind of the sea, I am the wave of the sea. I didn't want to rewrite that, and I didn't want to leave it out, so I thought there was no harm in keeping that as a poem just in there, and I loved it. It's epic. It's like Beowulf or Hercules. It's this real call to the elements, call to the gods. That's my kind of crack right there, and I hope you enjoyed that as well. While I think of it, so I was in Columbus, Ohio a couple of weeks ago, and a girl came up to me. No, I got a message on Instagram. I got tagged in a photo by a girl who said that she was at Celtic Nights and that she was hoping that she could meet me after the show to tell me how much she enjoys the podcast. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I'd traveled like thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean, like from a podcast that I record in a studio in Dublin. That, like, I've tried plugging myself, and the studio Head Stuff Podcast Network has their name as well, and they've been plugging it as well. But like nothing big like that America wise. And I replied straight away. I said, I absolutely, like, I'd love to chat afterwards, because we sell a bit of merchandise from the show. We sell CDs and stuff after the show, and we do go out after the show and have a bit of a meet and greet with the audience. Real nice to just shake hands and say hello to everyone and thank them for coming. So I knew I was going to be out there anyway. And she just came up to me and we said hello, and I just asked her, I said, how did you find out about it? How did you find out about the podcast? Because it's so recent as well. Like, this is episode 14, but that's still only a couple of months in the grand scheme of, you know, like, the big podcasts are in their hundreds and hundreds of episodes at this stage and going strong. And she just said that she was really into folklore and she had been looking for a podcast like it, and she just it just came up. And I was so happy with that. I was so touched. It was so great to meet someone like and it reminded me how much I love this as a medium, podcast as a medium, that they are free, that they're so available, that anyone in the world can get them. And I've spoken before, it's like, we released this podcast on Audio Boom, is the hosting site. And on Audio Boom, you can look at your analytics. You can't see like how many subscribers you have, but you can see how many listens there are. And best of all, you can see where in the world you've been listened to. So the most bizarre places, like in Seoul in South Korea, the podcast has been listening to like a bit as well by a few. And I dedicated an episode to the South Korean listeners before. Haven't quite cracked into the North Korean market yet, but I'll get them. But for me to be traveling around America and to meet someone in Columbus, Ohio, who enjoyed the podcast was incredible. And I was so delighted to meet her. And this episode is dedicated to her, if she is listening out there, as I hope she is. I hope meeting me didn't put her off listening to the podcast anymore. But yeah, I got a real kick out of that. And even last night at the show, some woman came up to me after at the table and said, "Oh, I subscribed at the interval. I look forward to listening to it." It's great. It just makes you feel like you're doing something all right, doing something okay. So thank you so much to all of you who listen to it and continue to support it. I hope it's getting better. I hope we're forming it more. I hope it's not dipping in any way, because I just want it to get stronger and stronger, because I love doing it so much. But to talk a little bit more about the story before we head off, the big thing when you were researching it, as I said, like, difficult, tricky one to research, but we're Spanish. The Gaelic people, like, it's hard to know, like, where there's a couple of ideas of where even the term Gael and Gaelic and Gaelic comes from, because there's so many similarities, but there's very different ones as well. And yet the thought is that they came from the Iberian Peninsula, they came from Spain, so we're all Irish people are secretly Spanish, apparently. How wonderful is that? What a lovely thing. And this story there are versions of this that get very, very religious again, like a lot of them, just trying to marry. It's the early Christian scribes trying to marry the two worlds. But this is almost like a three-hander of this is mythology, religion, and history. You've got the three of you. You've got the story that was held as the belief. You've got the new story of the belief, trying to marry them two together. And then you're mixing that with things that actually did happen. There actually were a Gaelic people. They did come and settle in Ireland at some point. Did they overthrow three mythological gods and their battle goddess wives to do so? Possibly not, but that still did happen in some form. And the attempt to rationalize that and to explain that is so admirable and so obviously what people would have wanted. You know, everyone wanted to know constantly throughout history. It's the why we're here. and those early Christian scribes that are the reason we do still have these stories, even though they've altered and doctored so many of them, and probably through the ones that they couldn't tie together into and marry with Christianity are lost to the ages because of them as well. And that's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the Greek myths have survived so well because the people who wrote them down, those early Greek poets, were some of the greatest poets of all time. And so the work was instantly recognized and instantly well received, and was passed down straight away, and then was turned in generations was turned into the greatest drama that's still performed. There are still productions of Oedipus and Medea and all these wonderful Greek tragedies. These are still performed all around the world every year, and they're literally thousands of years old. And Ireland still has that as well, just not quite as well preserved. And that's my little goal with this, in the very, very modest, obviously very minor way, but still, like, that's what I want out of this, is just to keep these alive, to let people know, not just Irish people, but to let people know that our mythology is here as well, and our mythology is good, and trying to salvage that. And I hope you all get that, and I hope you all like that. But it's a little bit of a shorter episode today, just because I have the show and everything, but I really hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back next week, right on time, hopefully this time, with another myth story. So I'm excited about the next episode. I'm excited about every episode, but the next one is a special one for a different reason. I have been reading a book on American folktales, as I said before on this, because I wanted to tie my trip in America with the podcast as well. So I wanted to look for some Irish American folktales. We had the folktale of the Tobacco Quest a couple of weeks ago, which was, an allegory of my own, not an allegory, but just similar to my own travel going across to America, and it was nice to prepare in that way with it. But next we're going to get an American folktale. And amazingly, it's an American version of an Irish folktale. Or it might be the one I read before might be an Irish version of the American folktale. More likely an American version of the Irish folktale, though, I think. But you'll see about it. And it's actually one. I very nearly had this folktale as the very first episode. So when it was the very first story in this book of American folktales I found, I said, that's a sign. That's a sign from the fairies themselves that I was meant to do this as the first episode. Have the script ready to go, looking forward to recording it, and I hope you all enjoy listening to it. So I'll go on now. I'm going to head out into Galveston again, enjoy a bit of this Texas sun, a bit of this good Texas weather, and I'm going to get some gumbo. I'm going to be that guy. I'm in southern Texas. I mean eastern Texas now, as far as I know. I'm on the coast now. I was terrible at geography in school. I didn't realize that Texas actually was a coastal state. Texas is just the biggest thing in the world, and I love it here. So I'll go on, but continue listening. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to contact me, as always, you can contact me on Instagram at olahansolo, all one word, OLOHANSOLO. And I will see you all next week round the fireside. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Headstuff Podcast Network.